Hello, everybody. My name is Freebiewits, and welcome to another episode of A Random Rants with me, your host. And this will be the first time during a random rant video where I'll be speaking face to face with you directly. This will be all done live. I'm quite frankly feeling a bit lazy, but not lazy enough to not put on this lovely suit of armor. I've only put like half of it on. If I stand up, you'll probably see me in my boxer shorts, so let's avoid that, shall we? Now, today we're going to be talking about the Dungeon Master Guide, and more specifically, the section on page 6, very early on, that talks about the different kinds of players there are. Now, it's only on one page, so it's a bit limited here and there, and in some cases, they kind of repeat the same thing in different languages. But my job here is to give you the examples they give and then give you a more applicable way to put that into action. And I'll give you some examples later on when I describe all these different kinds of D&D players. Now, keep in mind, there are always outliers, there is always exceptions to the rules. These are just descriptions, these are not specifically rules. So if anyone plays outside of these archetypes, as we'll just call them, they are not breaking the rules. They're just playing D&D the way they want to. Now, the first type of player that the Dungeon Master Guide describes is the acting kind of player. Now, I'm just going to read the excerpt here. Players who enjoy acting like getting into character and speaking in their characters' voices. Role players at heart, they enjoy social interactions with NPCs, monsters, and their fellow party members. Okay, pretty straightforward. I'm a bit of an actor in that case. I do love interacting in character using my character's voice. Engage players who like acting by giving them opportunities to develop their characters' personalities and background. An easy way of doing this is to have a one-on-one session 0 with them and introduce them to all the characters from their background. So if their background includes a teacher, roleplay the teacher. Alright, Phineas, we're going to go through the drills one more time. So they kind of know what to expect from this teacher character. So in the future, if they ever run into the teacher character with all the other players, they can say something like, oh yeah, my teacher's a bit of a hard ass, he's a bit of a grizzled veteran type guy, but he's a good guy. He always puts me through the paces, and he's made me what I am today. So that there's a bit of context whenever they travel from place to place and they know the person. Nothing's more awkward than going, hey, yeah, I know this guy, his name is... I mean, that still might happen if your players have terrible memories, as do I. I'm terrible at remembering names and the like, but at least this way it gives an opportunity to fix that little awkward pause. Next thing, allowing them to interact regularly with NPCs. This is pretty much a no-brainer. That's pretty easy enough. I would say, in this case, have an NPC come visit them. So if the players don't want to make the visit themselves, maybe have the NPC visit them. So it could be something like an annoying fan. Like, oh my god, you guys are the Adventurers 5. I love your work. Can I get your autograph? And they could be a groupie. For something a bit more helpful, it could be a traveling salesman that they keep running into. Ah, my friends, how did you do against that ice giant you told me about last time? Did you manage to run into him and take him down for your revenge? Yes, I have some extra potions for you. I see you're all alive, all in one piece. And if you have characters like this that ask them questions, then it can give the players a chance to respond, and every player likes to talk about what they've been up to, so they could say something like, oh no, the ice giant got away, or oh no, the ice giant turned out to be a really cool guy and it helped us take down this volcano monster, and they can sort of parse the information as they perceive it to this other NPC who not necessarily follows them, but runs into them a lot. So that's one way to have a regularly popping up NPC. Add role-playing elements to combat encounters. Sometimes when someone fights, there is not much room for talking. However, banter is certainly a thing, so the players can insult them. Hell, even have the bad guys insult the players. I mean, you always hear about players going, okay, I'm going to taunt this guy so he focuses on me. You can do that too with your NPCs. Have the bandit go, hey, you in the dress, you stink. Oh no, the guy in the dress is a wizard. Uh-oh. You get the idea, right? So even if it's completely antagonistic, there can still be a bit of role-playing there, and there can be a bit of back and forth. You're fat! What does that make you then? And no, you're fat! Or, I don't know. Point is, even if the role-playing is antagonistic, it's still role-playing, and it can help, peel back the layers of the characters and how they would react. You could always also include different objectives for the NPCs, so it may not be destroy the PCs, but rather something along the lines of, we're not here to kill you all. We just want that guy specifically. He slept with my daughter. And then there could be a bit of role-playing back and forth as they try to avoid hurting the other players. But eventually, if the other players keep protecting that one character, let's just say the bard. The bard is always the one who makes the trouble, I assume. Let's just say they all want the bard, and they, non-lethally strike the other characters, and you can make that clear in the role-playing. It's like, oh, you guys see that the guard captain and his goons are attacking you, but they're not trying to really kill you or hurt you. They're just trying to push you away, and they're specifically focusing all their killing blows on the bard. So that could help with a bit of role-playing a bit there. And finally, incorporating elements from their characters' backstories into adventures. So I mentioned the teacher from before. It could be, in theory, the teacher could have taught another student who wasn't just the player, and the other student is one of the bad guys, for example. I mean, you see this in Star Wars, for example. Hello, I'm Obi-Wan. I taught Darth Vader. You have to fight him now. Bam! Luke Skywalker is in the plot, despite being just a farm guy from the middle of nowhere, right? There you go. Moving along, we then have exploring type players. Players who desire exploration want to experience the wonders that a fantasy world has to offer. They want to know what's around the next corner or hill. They also like to find hidden clues and treasure. Okay, this is a very interesting one. And there's a bit of common advice that I've heard on a lot of D&D podcasts, and it's a bit of advice that I follow myself. I will point it out to you guys in a bit, because the DMG does not say anything about it as far as I'm aware. So, engage players who like to explore by dropping clues that hint at things yet to come. So, let's just say they're at the ruined site of a bunch of carriages, and you see some arrows in the dirt and such. The players will be able to think, oh, there are enemy archers around, perhaps. Other things you could do for them is letting them find things when they take the time to explore. So they check the arrows and they see, oh, it's this type of arrow that only goblins use. Or there's no blood. What's going on here despite their arrows? Something weird is going on, right? And thirdly, providing rich descriptions of exciting environments and using interesting maps and props. So if they get attacked by a bunch of goblins later on, you can use this new battle map where they go, okay, I overturned this chest, I have a look at it. I mean, the description thing will come from DM to DM. Not all of us are very good at describing things. I'm not the best at describing things. I really have to think about it. It's very difficult for me to improv descriptions. And that's the beauty of preparation, because a part of intelligence is knowing a fact, right? Just being able to recall it out of thin air. If you've prepared the fact beforehand and are able to grab it, to all onlookers, it looks like you've grabbed it out of thin air, when in fact you've just grabbed it out of the book. Right, so you look smart that way. So you can be more descriptive just by taking the time to write things down. So you could say, oh, the wagon looks rusted with age. It creaks eerily, yet its sturdiness and firmness as it goes along the path tells you that it's been through this a million times and will be able to go through this a million more. Something like that, perhaps. Finally, in the exploring thing, giving monsters secrets to uncover or cultural details to learn. So maybe you'll find out, oh, this monster has a specific weakness, or not even weakness, certain behavior. Oh, after it eats something, they like to crunch the bones of their victims, not because they are hungry anymore, but because they like the tactile feeling in their jaws. And because of that, you can always tell when this monster has eaten, because you can hear it from miles away. Crack, crack, crack. The beast has fed well tonight. Now, none of this explains the thing that I was going to point out. So earlier I made a point that a lot of DMs do this, and the DMG doesn't say anything about it at all. Players, I'm going to reread this, so see if you can get it. Players who desire exploration want to experience the wonders that a fantasy world has to offer. They want to know what's around the next corner or hill. Here's the thing. Dungeons and Dragons, for a lot of people, myself included, consider this to be a cooperative exercise. So the players might already know what's around the corner or a hill. In that I could say, oh, there's this big temple, and the players could ask, ooh, does it have shrines to these gods that we know about based on where the sun is and all that stuff? And you could just say, yes, it does. Suddenly the player is contributing to that world. Or if you say, oh, okay, you go back to your house, please describe it. It's no longer the DM dictating what's in that house, what's around the next corner or hill. It's the player who's dictating it now. They could say, oh, in my house there's this bedroom. It has these sheets on the side that they've been bleaching because it's cheaper to get linen this way in this area for whatever reason. Oh, and there's this sword in a tree that I've left there because I've been too lazy to get it out ever since I got upset and stabbed it there. Oh, and in my village there's this really nice doctor. You get the idea. The player who likes to explore is now the one describing all the mysteries of their village. Now, there's obviously limits to this. They can't just say, oh yeah, and next to my bedside is a +5 sword of dragon slaying, and it's been there the entire time. I'm just going to pick it up so we can use it for adventure. No. There are limits, of course. And, well, if they're your friends and you're playing with your friends, they'll probably not try to screw you over that way. Moving on. Instigating. Players who like to instigate actions are eager to make things happen, even if that means taking hilarious risks. They would rather rush headlong into danger and face the consequences than face boredom. I understand where this comes from, and to some degree, I think all players are instigating players to a certain degree. There is always a brief period. There's always a period of time where everyone has their patience. And it just depends on that patience that would turn them into the stereotypical instigating play. If you're instigating instincts kicking after 2 seconds of me talking, then no, you're out of the game. I'll sit you down, I'll talk to you, and if you don't want to change, then out the door you go, right? If you can keep yourself quiet, or at least let things keep going for a few minutes, then maybe. It just depends. But, like, if you're sitting still for 2 hours and nobody's interacting with you and you're trying to get the DM's attention and they're ignoring you or whatever, then that's not instigating behavior. That's just you trying to roleplay because, you know, they invited you over to roleplay. So 2 hours, whatever, 1 hour, even half an hour of being ignored, okay. It'll depend from group to group. Some people are okay just being observers for hours upon end and only doing something when combat happens. Okay, sure. Some people are like that. Might be a bit much to me, to be honest. But yeah, no, the wording on what an instigating player is in that respect feels a bit broad. Moving along, engage players who like to instigate by allowing them to affect their surroundings. Oh, you want to tip this lantern over? It sets the bar on fire. Including things in your adventures to tempt them. Oh, there's this lantern on the edge of the table, and everything around it looks flammable. Letting their actions put the characters in a tight spot. You're now in a bar that's on fire. And finally, including encounters with NPCs who are feisty and unpredictable as they are. The barman looks at you, and then they look at the lantern. They tip the lantern over. The bar is now on fire. Also, the barman is a cat person. So this explains a lot. Alright, moving along. Fighting! Players who enjoy fantasy combat like kicking the tar out of villains and monsters. They look for any excuse to start a fight, favoring bold action over careful deliberation. There's a lot of crossover in instigating players in that regard, I suppose. Engage players who like fighting by springing unexpected combat encounters on them. The bar is on fire. Suddenly, ninjas. Vividly describing the havoc their characters wreak with their attacks and spells. You punch the ninja. His head rotates 720 degrees. As far as you're aware, human heads aren't supposed to do that. He falls down dead. Very much dead. You don't think he felt much pain, though. It was that sudden. Include combat encounters with large numbers of weak monsters. There are a lot of ninjas. Like, a lot of them. And interrupting social interaction and exploration with combat. You're just talking when suddenly, ninjas. I don't think I've ever done that in the game, just introduced hundreds of ninjas, but it could work. I also will point out the advice where it says include combat encounters with a large number of weak monsters. No. No. It can work, however, a few things. Number one, action economy is a thing, so the more actions there are, the more actions that are likely to do lots of damage to the players. Number two, AoE is a thing, so I suppose that does make the fighting wizard player who likes fighting, fireball everything, feel satisfied. But I will also say, including combat counters, where they do one-on-one fights with I wouldn't say realistic, with in-universe badasses, and having beat them, also feels very satisfying. Look, Legolas is a badass for clearing out hundreds and hundreds of orcs, right? But there's no denying that Gandalf is equally, if more so, of a badass for taking on the Balrog one-on-one. I don't think there's much of an argument there. So I would say that's the only tweak to the wording I would put there. I would say maybe seemingly outgun or outnumber the players, and if they overcome those odds, they will then feel like awesome badasses, right? Give them a challenge, not an impossible challenge, mind you, because there's a difference between getting your face completely wrecked for something that you can't stop, and that stops you feeling like a badass in a fight, compared to something where you scrape by the skin of your teeth that makes you feel amazing, right? It's a fine balance there. Moving along, you have optimizing. Players enjoy optimizing their characters' capabilities, like to fine-tune their characters for peak combat performances by gaining levels, new features, and magic items. They welcome any opportunity to demonstrate their character's superiority. I disagree with the specific wording there. Characters' capabilities for peak combat performance. You can power game your character for any number of ways. You can make them the most stealthiest stealth sneak in the universe, which can help in combat, but is a utility outside of combat more often than not. You can have a character who can lie, who can diplomatize, talk their way out of any situation, and that's another type of power gaming. I mean, I remember having a character in D&D 3.5 who could get in excess of 60s when he rolled the dice for diplomacy. It was kind of ridiculous. I don't remember the exact build, but he could only do it so many times a day. And as far as I remember, there was no actual magic involved. 3.5 was busted as a system. Point is, optimizing isn't supposed to specifically be for combat. I suppose if you called this optimizing for combat, it'd be accurate, but it's just I'm being semantic. Pedantic? One of those words. Now, you can enjoy players who like optimization by ensuring steady access to new abilities and spells. I mean, that's just saying, hey, here, you can level up. Bam, you have access to new abilities and spells. Right? Using desired magic items adventure hooks, so you could say, hey, I see you're playing your wizard type character. What kind of items would make him perfect? Oh, I'd like this kind of boots, please. Well, lucky for you, this quest giver guy, he's got the boots you need. I kill the guy with the boots and take them. Please don't do that. Including encounters that let their character shine. Hey, you like fire, right? Yes. Well, there's a lot of enemies here who are weak to fire. You can see the interaction there, right? Providing quantifiable rewards like experience points for non-combat encounters. You managed to talk down the barman from kicking you all out. Get some experience points. Experience points is very hard for me. Because I like to play with milestones. Defeat one of your rivals, you all level up. Save the city from this big, bad, evil encounter. Level up. For me, I like giving inspiration points as a reward. And rules as written, you only can have one inspiration point at a time. But for me, I house rule it saying that you can stock up your inspiration points. You can have as many as you want. And there's no limit. And you can use them all in one game if you really want to as well. A very common house rule that I've run into with my players and people who've DM'd for me is that you can get an inspiration point if you talk about what happened last session, just to bring everyone up to speed, forcing everyone who wants that inspiration point to pay attention during the game so that when the next session comes around, you can then tell everyone what's happened and get an inspiration point. We also rule that the person who got the inspiration point last cannot get the inspiration point again, but it does put them still in the habit of trying to remember what's going on and once again paying attention. It's kind of twofold there, and then of course they get the inspiration point. Everybody wins. The next kind of character is the problem solver. Players who want to solve problems like to scrutinize NPC motivations, untangle a villain's machinations, solve puzzles, and come up with plans. Engage players who like to solve problems by including encounters that emphasize problem solving. Alright, boys. How do we get into the casino without being seen? There are double the guards more than usual, but the second floor, that's our ticket in. And yeah, you go that way, that direction. Rewarding planning and tactics with in-game benefits. This is a bit harder. Like, if you're already in a combat encounter, there are kind of rules for this. Flanking gives you a slight bonus. If you have pack tactics, then it definitely gives you a big bonus. Sneak attacking people, ambushing them. I suppose you could always make morale a thing with enemy forces. Like, if a guard gets attacked from one end, they would ignore what's behind them if they don't know what's there. They could panic. If people start going down, you can have the remaining enemies go, oh god, run away! And then have one go, no, you cowards, we're going to keep fighting. But of course, the guy who's staying behind is now hopelessly outnumbered as his friends run away. So you could reward that as an in-game benefit, I suppose. Occasionally allowing a smart plan to grant an easy win for the players. Sometimes when you put a problem to your players, the answer even to yourself isn't obvious, but suddenly if they say something really smart, you could say, no, that would technically work. I won't say it out loud, I'll just let it play out. And then you do, and they feel amazing for it. And you don't have to tell them, oh yeah, I didn't expect you guys to do that. You just let them have their win, just let them have their win. That said, telling them, I didn't expect you to do that, does make the players feel awesome as well. Because it makes them feel like they've outsmarted you. And then you can create NPCs with complex motives. This is pretty obvious. Now, previously in one of the other archetypes I was talking about enemies whose goals aren't to destroy the players. Sometimes they just want to arrest one specific player, right? You can have them try to ignore the players and see them as a nuisance while they try to finish a ritual. We must complete the ritual. Stop them instead of kill them or something like that. Well, killing would be the best thing to do. You could have a enemy wizard, either instead of throwing a fireball and killing all the players, they could continue to try and open up the magic circle for whatever reason. So the players have multiple things to focus on, and it's a bit more interesting than wizard just throws fireball at you guys, right? Moving on, storytelling. Players who love storytelling want to contribute to a narrative. They like it when their players are heavily invested in an unfolding story, and they enjoy encounters that are tied to and expand an overarching plot. There's a lot of crossovers, as you probably noticed by now. Acting, storytelling, feels like one of the same to me sometimes. So, you engage these players who like storytelling by using their characters' backgrounds to help shape the stories of the campaign. I've kind of mentioned this in the acting part. I'm the teacher. I taught your evil rival how to fight. Here, let me show you some counters to one of their most powerful attacks. Making sure an encounter advances the story in some way. Oh, this bandit camp, it turns out they have a receipt, and it's being paid by your evil rival. I don't understand why a lot of evil bad guys do this. Like, here's a receipt that'll lead your illegal actions straight to me. I suppose if it's a really bureaucratic, lawful, evil villain, they might do that, but it feels weird that they do this in a lot of video games. Regardless, making their characters' actions helps steer future events. Oh, you found the traitor guy. Do you kill him? Do you brainwash him? Well, what do you do? It's up to you, I suppose. Giving NPCs ideals, bonds, and flaws that the adventurers can exploit. Ooh. I mean, this is all pretty common sense stuff, but an example you can do with the NPC's ideals, bonds, and flaws is perhaps they still see the player characters as their friend and they don't actually want to kill them, which of course gives the player characters an opportunity to level up and kick their ass and become strong enough to do so. Maybe they have a loved one, for example, that the players could exploit, maybe take hostage or rescue in the event that it's an abusive relationship. Flaws, like maybe they're overly arrogant. I don't mean flaws like I'm weak to fire, you gotta hit this guy with fire. I mean flaws like they never keep their word, and you can go up to their lackeys and say, hey, didn't he backstab his top general a while back? Why are you working for him? And then you may not necessarily have his underlings turn on him, but at least run away in the bad guy's moment of weakness. Because maybe they're sticking with him because they're too afraid to do anything else. So, that's my random rant of the day about Dungeon Master Guide and its little archetypes of different kind of players. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've picked up something useful that you can use for your own D&D games. My name is Freebywits. I hope you've had a wonderful day, and bye-bye.